Hello, we are live on the No Delusion Zone, and my very special guest is once again Adam Dunigan. He was here with me before. There you are, Adam. Adam is a candidate for the Democratic seat in Virginia's 8th Congressional District with the primary coming up August 4th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, he is again the Democratic candidate, one of the Democratic candidates in Virginia's 8th Congressional District. A lot to talk about, starting with Virginia. So, first of all, welcome back, Adam.
Thank you. I appreciate it, David. I really enjoyed last time. Looking forward to this one.
Same here, same here. Well, like I said, let's jump right into it. The news, as far as I'm concerned, and your local territory, was the decision by the Virginia Supreme Court to not allow the certification of the Virginia redistricting map, which I understand would have given Democrats, was it 4 or 5 additional seats
Four
in the
additional
House?
seats.
4 additional seats.
Yeah.
Well, they said you can't certify it. That is certainly going to be appealed, but they also refuse to allow certification while it's appealed. So why don't we start with that? Talk about the court's decision, your thoughts on that, and the ramifications going forward.
It's disappointing. Democrats, we really were pushing for this, and I think it was a good thing generally for the country to try to take back some real power, at least put a speed brake on the excesses of the Trump administration. However, the referendum itself was contentious, and there are sound legal arguments to be made for not allowing it to go forward. I believe that it should go forward, and I think those legal arguments will fall apart in appeal. I still think this will probably go forward, but it has thrown a lot of the races and like my candidacy, for example, and other young candidates like me. It's thrown it into chaos in a way that it's hard to remain objective about the legal challenge, the legal aspect of this, separate from the disruption that it causes to the electorate and to all the candidates running. It's frustrating, but I'm also objective enough to realize that if there is sound legal reasoning that this should not go forward, we have to be a nation of laws, and so we have to respect whatever decision the court makes eventually.
Well, you just mentioned something, and I wanted to ask you, though, and I know it's a sensitive point, but if it is not successfully appealed, what does that mean for your district and your candidacy specifically?
Oh, a big question. So right now, for anybody who's not intimately familiar with the process as is, I announced my candidacy for Virginia's 8th district. The referendum would have drawn me into Virginia's new 7th district. The 8th district had an incumbent, Congressman Don Beyer, who's a good man, but probably needs to step out of the way for a new generation of leadership. The new 7th district doesn't have an incumbent; it's an open seat, and so there's about 5 million candidates running for this. And what that means is if this fails, if appeal is not upheld and we revert back to the old districts, I go back to the race that I actually entered to run anyway, where I think I can still draw some value out of and be the kind of representative that the old 8th district needs. However, it means that we do not get the shot that we thought we had at taking back some real power and a durable majority in Congress come November, whoever will. And I think that is a loss for the country.
Well, as most people know who follow this, even generally, as far as the redistricting issue is concerned, it all started off with the Republicans, who started. I think it was with Texas, and then they went to several other states and gained several seats in Congress by this, also known as gerrymandering. I just read today that it's either the governor or a candidate for governor in Tennessee wants to eliminate all Democratic congressional seats in her state. So it's a completely Republican state. And, if the Republicans had their way, that's what they would do. There would be no Democrats in Congress. There would be no aisle in Congress. It would all just be overflowing with Democrats. Let me play a brief clip, if I could, Adam, about this issue. You may have seen it before. It talks about the Virginia Supreme Court decision and what it means generally or nationally.
The fight over who gets to draw the district might determine who controls Congress. Virginia voters just approved a constitutional amendment to redraw their congressional maps. Less than 24 hours later, a judge declared the entire thing void. Not paused, not stayed, void from the beginning. And right now, social media is full of two kinds of people. People saying, don't worry about it, this judge always gets overruled, keep celebrating, and people saying, it's over, the court's killed it. Both of those are wrong. And I want to walk you through what actually happened, what the legal issues are, and what happens next, because this thing is far from settled and it matters way beyond Virginia. I'm Eliza Orleans, career public defender for 15 years in Manhattan. Okay, so to understand why Virginia is doing this at all, you have to zoom out. After the 2024 election, Donald Trump publicly pushed the Republican-controlled state legislatures to redraw their congressional maps mid-decade, not waiting for the new census or going through normal redistricting. Just do it now because we can and because we need the seats. So Texas went first, then Missouri, then North Carolina. Collectively, Republicans picked up potentially 9 new House seats through redistricting, not elections or persuading voters, just moving lines on a map. Democrats had fewer states to work with, but they started fighting back. California passed Prop 50, a new map through a voter referendum, and then there was Virginia. And the stakes are real. The Republicans' House majority is razor thin, and redistricting, moving lines on a map, has become the single biggest structural battleground heading into the 2026 midterms. The fight over who gets to draw the districts might determine who controls Congress.
I mean, it's absolutely true. It has ramifications far beyond Virginia. But, let's not dwell on that because there's nothing you and I can do today. We have to wait and see how this pans out in the appeal. Let's assume optimistically that, the Democrats win the appeal. It does get certified and we move on. I wanted to ask you 2 brief questions on this issue. I looked at your competitors, Democratic competitors. There's not that many, but there's a few. What do you have that they don't have? Why should people vote for you? In one word or less.
Dark horse energy. I respect all of my competitors in the race, but I do. All of my competitors in this race essentially are coming from paper in the federal architecture as a lawyer, then around the aspect. And I think that has a deleterious effect on your ability to see the American situation, the legislative situation, Congress, with a objective set of eyes. I think if we just in Virginia expanded all of this capital, took the big risk to have this referendum and to make these map changes, uncomfortable as a lot of us were with the idea of gerrymandering from faith. If we expended that capital and had to take that risk, then voting for the same people that were already in elected office right next to it, that required us to take that risk in the first place, is the definition of insanity. I think what we need in this country bending right now is a new generation of leaders that are untainted by that, maybe untainted, not coming from that political pipeline, that gilded pipeline that anoints chosen candidates, that is more favoring incumbency, traditional measured approach to picking leadership. It's having control of the entire congressional delegation in the favor of candidates that have new energy ideas and are free from the backward finance networks. That's the situation right now. If we don't do that,
you have a Wi-Fi connection problem. I think that the audio is cutting in and out. Your video is fine, but the audio is cutting in and out. I don't know if you can change the setting, reboot it, or what.
I apologize. I'll be right back.
That's better, but
better. Okay. Well,
yeah, if you could, what you're doing now is good. Yeah,
very good. Okay.
No, because I want people to hear you, obviously. Let me ask you this. I don't speak to MAGA. I just get into arguments. But assuming that this goes forward in Virginia, and let's just say that you actually, you win. You win the primary. You're the candidate for the 8th district. And I might have asked you this before, but it's still very, very important. Speak to MAGA right now. Why should they even consider you in the general election?
If I'm talking directly to our MAGA friends right now, I would say, I think the thing that you have distrusted for a long time about the Democrats is that there was always a focus on old names, old faces that already let you down. One of my competitors in this race was a financier of the Clintons, for example. Whatever you think about the history of the dialectic between the political parties, You have a chance right now to look across the aisle with the backdrop of a president that lied to you and launched wars, and he said he'd be the president of peace. With the backdrop of a president that promised you more jobs and lower cost of living, who has blown up the national debt and increased your cost of living exponentially. You have a chance right now to look back across the aisle at a group of people in the Democratic Party that you have traditionally been skeptical of, and hear one of them say, I'm skeptical of them too, and that's why I'm trying to change it. And if you're not willing to take a gamble to make that kind of change in partnership with somebody like me that shares your patriotism, your sense of identity as an American, then I do wonder what it would take to bring you closer back to sanity and away from leaders who have let you down repeatedly. I don't know what that is, but I think it has to look something like me and my candidacy. And I'm right here. We have a chance right now.
I agree. And I think one of the things the Democrats have failed miserably about over the last several years, it's old school, but I call it kitchen table politics. What Americans talk about around the kitchen table, things that are important. They're not necessarily concerned about foreign policy or, what's going on in the Kremlin or things that are important. They're concerned about whether or not they're going to have a job. And if they do, what is it going to pay? What are their taxes going to be? Are they going to be able to buy a house? Can they afford their rent, the price of food, and on and on and on? I know you get that. And I've read your platform and your answers. And I think that's the one of the main focuses for you is the economy and what Americans most are concerned about. So let me ask you the next question on that. What do you believe has been the biggest problem in the economy, in the Trump platform or agenda, if you will? I don't think he has one, but in the Republicans' economic policy, what is the worst thing that they've done that's hurting most Americans right now?
I think here in Virginia, at least my constituency, in both the old 8th or the new 7th, whatever it turns out to be, the effects of the one big beautiful bill can't be ignored. Right? We have thousands of Americans losing healthcare coverage. You have businesses being hollowed out. You have clean energy and alternative energy source initiatives losing their funding or tax credits in a way that makes them almost commercially non-viable. And would have been really good if we were going to launch a war with Iran was to have a durable power alternative and systems built in this country that could have offset cost increases in petroleum. It would have been really good if we had that. And the Trump administration's capricious nature of canceling contracts and sweeping away decades of work to build a regulatory infrastructure for these new sectors. The idea is that our country legislatively should be building towards a new system that can withstand challenges or disruptions like we just had in the Strait of Hormuz. And they didn't do it. Or if they were doing it, they swept it away with the wave of the pen with no thought about the consequences for the future. And that means people in Virginia and around the country are going to lose their jobs. The encroachment of AI is going to create job displacement, even orders of magnitude over that. And there's nobody with their hand on the wheel. There's no serious person in the room that's thinking not just about how to stop the bleeding now, but to start the breathing again as we step into a very scary and risk-filled American economy that's going to come tomorrow. I am trying to ring the alarm bell on that, not just against the Republican agenda, but also against the Democrats too, who have been short-sighted in their own ways about how to structure legislatively where this country goes from here. I think we need that right now. And if we don't have it, 10, 20 years from now, who knows what we could look like? We need an adult back in the room. We need a hand on the wheel. And I think I could be part of that.
I know that a lot of Republicans or states that lean Republican or have voted overwhelmingly for Trump and the Republicans are states that are involved in fossil fuels, whether it's coal mining, oil production, refineries, and so forth and so on. Can you speak to them about, although you understand where they're coming from, the loss of jobs perhaps, and the devastation of the economies in some instances, can you speak to how the devastation of alternate fuel sources in green energy by the Trump administration is going to be catastrophic for them in the long term?
Oh, yeah. If I'm speaking directly to that person, maybe sitting in Western Virginia or West Virginia or oil areas in Texas, I'll tell you, I get it. Uh, a system was created around you that encouraged complacency on the part of regulators, the governments, and commercial companies because profits were high and a high tide lifts all ships. But excuse me, but I will say that they lied to you. They lied to all of us. And business has shown itself over the last 20, 30 years in the absence of real pushback from the government, or again, that hand on the wheel. Business has shown you that they are not going to be constructive with your community. They will extract what they can from it, and you will get the scraps at the table, if that. I think the encroachment of AI data centers in Virginia is a great example of this, right? We can't fight progress in the AI sector. Like, it's going to happen no matter what. But we are giving away almost $2 billion in tax incentives to companies that are making hundreds of billions of dollars in profits already. And meanwhile, the people who have to live next to the infrastructure created with AI data centers, they are seeing none of the benefits of the profits going to that sector. So here in Virginia or West Virginia, those profits are going to New York, California, or overseas. A lot of them overseas. And the people are having to suffer environmental consequences, noise pollution in their neighborhoods, in giant, supermax prisons in the middle of their neighborhood with no actual benefit. And the end use case for a lot of AI has been, people in Germany making cute cat memes. It's frustrating. And I don't know the best way to communicate just how taken advantage of we all have been as a society by a profit-driven industry that does not even give a nod to the decency and quality of life that people deserve. That's going to be high on my list when I get to office, to start putting some morality back in the way that we legislate and regulate.
It's always amazed me, not just now, but for several years, how Republicans specifically, but some Democrats too, vote for people who are voting and enacting laws totally against their best interest, whether it's raising taxes on the middle to poorer classes, giving tax breaks to the upper classes, the billionaires, taking away health benefits, closing hospitals and clinics, and yet they vote these people in again and again. I just want to throw up a brief graphic here and get your response here. Well, I don't know if that's the one I want to do. Yeah, this one. And I did a podcast on this the other day. It has to do with the staggering amount of functional illiteracy in this country. And it's going to make what we're talking about even darker, because you said you don't know how to address that exactly, how to get through to the people, like you just said, in the coal mining areas, West Virginia, the oil producing areas and refineries of West Texas and Oklahoma. It makes doubly, triply more difficult, in my opinion, when 54%, according to several recent studies, have said 54% of American adults cannot read or read at the 6th grade level or below. Adam, if you're reading at the 6th grade level or below, you're basically thinking in cartoons. You're thinking in cartoon statements. You can read the back of a soup can in the supermarket and get some crude jokes, but you're not going to understand political policy. You're not even going to be able to read the U.S. Constitution, even though you may put it against your chest like MAGA does. How do you, or wrap yourself in the American flag? How would you address the staggering illiteracy or literacy problem in the United States? You're elected, you're a congressman. How do you even begin to attack that problem? Because that's one of my biggest interests, is the education system in this country.
I think, I got some real smart ideas about education and pipelining and re-inspiring some sense of academic curiosity in this country. I do have those, but I think the true solution is what I'm trying to do right now as part of my campaign. You have to go to where people are and make eye contact and inspire that curiosity on a fundamental level.
I agree.
I think one of the reasons that people get so disengaged in all of this is that the pace of change, or at least the dialogue around the change that's happening in this country, it comes at you so fast, and people are just trying to survive. When the referendum came down last week here in Virginia, and my little tiny 8th district got drawn into this monster 7th district, which goes to the West Virginia border, my first impulse and instinct was to get on my motorcycle and go all the way to the furthest extreme on the West Virginia border and just go talk to people there.
Right.
Because those people, I'm not going to scold them for not reading more up on policy or going into my campaign platform and understanding every single plank and the nuance within it, because they have to feed their family and work
Yeah.
1, 2, maybe even 3 jobs. I think if you
Yes.
want people to come back with some political literacy and a sober understanding of why we're doing the things we're doing legislatively or trying to do in my case, if you want to do that, you have to go shake that hand. You have to make eye contact with them, and you have to empathize with the fact that the system that was constructed around us as Americans for the last 3, 4 decades anyway was hollow at its core, and now we're starting to see the effect of that. I believe that I have a responsibility to go to those people and do exactly that, which is why you see me on sunburned right now, because I've been out on the road doing that, trying to inspire that curiosity.
And we've talked about that before. I mean, what we are doing, I think, is great and must be done, meaning the remote type of interview that I'm doing with you right now. And we've discussed this before, and I'm still going to hammer you on this. We need to do some town halls. We need to do some real in-person town halls. I mean, I've said this actually for years. This is nothing new for me, but it's hard to get done because, and I hate to say it, the Democrats have not been all that responsive to doing things like that. They just haven't. And in the state of Florida, where I live, the free state of Florida, I hate to say that. I told you this story where I tried to go into a live stream a few weeks ago with my local Democratic congressional candidate, and I signed on, and I was trying to do it for, I guess it was an hour, and I kept writing in, and finally it was over. And I wrote to the Florida Democratic Party, and they said, "Oh, well, it wasn't a video live stream; it was just, you had to write in and text." And I was just blown away. I mean, and they wonder why the Democrats in Florida. And by the way, as you know, DeSantis just gerrymandered the Democrats out of the state. I mean, I think there were 7 areas or 7 congressional districts that had a Democratic majority. Now it's going to be down to 4. The whole state is red. Really, I just saw the map. I don't want to talk about that. That's not your state, but it's indicative of what's going on. And let me ask you this, we'll get out of the education thing because I could do 2 episodes with you on that. In your opinion, how did we get to this point? How did we get to the point where the majority, Adam, of Americans are functionally illiterate?
I mean, that's a big question. I think the way
I know.
the attention economy, the information economy, it can't be ignored, right? Like we suddenly got these little black rectangles in our hands where you don't really have to read because you get all of your news via audio or 90-second clips.
Yeah. AI
and all that
slop
news.
and the rest of it. Yeah.
I mean, it's increasing every single day. So I think there does have to be an intentional, push back toward a sober, measured engagement with politics, policy, literature. I mean,
but it's not just money, is it, Adam? I'm sorry, because people keep saying, well, there's not enough. Look at Louisiana. They don't spend enough money. New York spends all this money, but there's still, illiteracy rates there. It's not just how much money you spend, is it?
Yep. No, and it's not. It's a hollowing out of what it means to be a thoughtful citizen. I say this in my platform. Anybody can go look it up. But a lot of the educational funding in our country and pipelining for promising students is straight into STEM, and that's not a bad thing. Then the backbone of American ingenuity and innovation for generations. I'm not knocking that, but we used to be a country that could cultivate the strongest economy and the world's best artists. We had thoughtful citizenry that engaged not with a partisan lens on what somebody else is telling them the country should be, but rather an objective understanding of what the founders wanted this country to be and what they wanted the citizenry of that country to reflect. We have moved so far away from that because everything is coming through a partisan lens. And this is why it's so important for me on my platform to protect, especially higher education, from interference from the government. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter, like an education starts with hearing all perspectives and the dialectic that comes with that. And we have gone away from that. And a lot of liberal schools are to blame on this too. We are teaching through one lens at any given time, and we are making people disinterested in learning the counter argument. And in a lot of cases now, I don't know about you or me, but like, I don't have time to go back and read like seminal texts or anything. So I get how people get further away from it. And I think the social media influence and the profit incentive of social media algorithms are pulling us further apart from each other every day. That's why, as part of my campaign, I'm trying to really drill into people that at the end of the day, we have to be Americans. And we have to redefine and rediscover what that shared identity is if we're ever going to step out of this phase.
Well, and I'm really frightened if somebody like a J.D. Vance does become the president, because he just recently gave a speech where he said that it's not true that America is just an idea. He said it's not an idea from the American. He said, no, it's a nation, and it's a nation of white Christian Europeans. A not so veiled, threat against immigration, and the fact that, or just flat out racism. I'm sorry, I'm telling you, J.D. Vance, America is an idea. It was born as an idea that never existed before. It's an idea of a nation of all kinds of different people from all kinds of places in the world and beliefs that had an idea to be something different than had ever happened before. And knowing that we were faulted, that we had made mistakes, we got to make mistakes, and we're always going to self-improve. I'm afraid about him, so I had to say that.
I think it's important to remember that for the majority, specific to immigration, for the majority of our country's history, we did not have hard borders with any. Not with Mexico. I mean, for my, the Irish in my family, when they came over from Ireland, as long as you didn't have tuberculosis, you got a stamp and you were a citizen. We used to have systems that were brave, that we had the courage to confront uncertainty and welcome people in without retracting into these fear-based narratives about the other, because it's fascinating, and there's a lot of comparison out there right now that I encourage people to go look up. But like, if you look up all of the MAGA adjacent rhetoric against Latino immigrants from Central and South America, for example, all of those same talking points were the same ones they said about the Italians, about the Swede, the Northern Europeans, the Irish, especially when they came in, the Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, over the course of our history, we do these cycles, and we're in one right now. And I think we can come out of it, honestly. But we do these cycles where we villainize an out group in order to foster some identity within the in group. But if the in group that you're fostering is fundamentally un-American, which I do believe the Trump administration and the accolades surrounding it, they're nihilists. They don't actually believe in the Constitution. There's no decency or compassion at the core of their political ideology. But that compassion and decency was at the core of the US Constitution. So I believe that makes it fundamentally un-American. And if I'm hoping for my candidacy, and because I come out of the Marine Corps, I come out of the Central Intelligence Agency, I'm hoping that somebody like me, a fellow white man with these boys in the White House, if I'm saying these things that so fundamentally contradict them, and I'm telling people that these boys are un-American, I'm hoping people listen to it and they can wake up to the fact that we can be Americans again, but we have to choose to walk down that path together.
Amen. And I'm going to get right to your intelligence and military background. I just want to leave it with you with one last thought. I mean, I remember seeing so many photos from 100 and some years ago that said Irish need not apply. I mean, and that was the real deal. And, these are Irish. And now some of these descendants of Irish people and Italians and Germans and Swedes are the same ones that are part of MAGA and saying, we don't want Latinos. We don't want Asians. We don't want anybody from, whatever, you name the country. And we don't want them here. We only want real Americans. Well, they weren't real Americans 120 years ago. But anyway, it's disgusting. Moving on to national security, and you mentioned your background. You are a Marine. You used to be in the Marine Corps, and you were a CI officer, case officer. So I want to move to national security issues. Of course, I can't ignore Iran. Well, before I get to Iran, I want to just ask you a general question that I haven't asked you before. What do you think of the proposition or possibility of reinstating a military draft?
Oh, it horrifies me. I really think if you're looking to create the most social division possible in this country, that is a surefire way to do it. I don't know, like, legally the challenges involved in doing that. That possibility doesn't keep me up at night just yet, because I still do believe at the core that we are a nation of laws, and the architecture required to actually effect a draft in this country. I believe that there are enough good Americans in that architecture that they would not go along with it. If it were to come back, it would be an indicator of like the largest backslide that we've had in the foundations of our democracy, because stepping away from that after the Vietnam era was a victory for everyone at every level of society. And if we are now starting to undo the victories, the cultural and social victories of the 20th century, the American century that we're all so proud of, if we're starting to undo those, everyone should be deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
Well, I think if a military draft were instituted during this administration, however long or short it lasts, I believe there would be riots. But that I had to ask you this. I do want to move on to Iran. From an intelligence officer, case officer's perspective, and yes, we could do 2, 3 episodes on this. What would you say about the Trump administration's inability to either assess or to listen to the intelligence assessment that I am sure was given to Hegseth and Trump before they started this war? What are your thoughts about the intelligence failures that went into this?
Well, I know firsthand, and I can't divulge on this, but I know firsthand from friends, both from the intelligence community and the military community that I stay in touch with, that they did hear this directly. And the tabletop exercises that have existed for decades about what armed conflict with Iran would look like, the events happened exactly as planned. The events happened exactly according to the expectations that military planners put together. There's no surprises in any of this. No surprises for anybody within the military, except apparently for Pete Hegseth and for Trump. And I think the driving force that caused this, or caused them to ignore all of their military assessment, is this self-mythologizing ethos. You have a bunch of guys right now that served or did not serve or barely served in command of these structures of subject matter experts that are screaming at them, that they are defaulting to this jingoistic, wrapped in the flag, Americans can do anything mentality. And that works great for the Marine charging up the hill, trying to take it. That does not work great when you have the commander in chief making calls that are fundamentally misaligned with military reality. This is our 3-day special operation. This is our Putin syndrome, where Trump and Hegseth are listening to the "yes, we can, sir," and not the people who are trying to save American service members' lives or prevent catastrophic disruptions to the global economy and global society. It's sad, and it's the same strongman narrative that's playing out again in cycles over and over and over again. And it is so depressing that cycle hit the U.S. government. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I do know that the problem is a fundamental unseriousness of leadership at the highest levels.
Well, I'm glad you said what you did, because I want folks to know that I am absolutely positive, beyond a doubt, that the intelligence community did tell Hegseth and Trump the reality of this. There are people who are experts in Iran, in all of the Middle Eastern cultures, the Persian, I mean, the history of Persia, and just the region itself, which Trump and Hegseth couldn't usually find on a map. So I am sure they briefed him on the pitfalls of doing this and strongly advised against doing this, but they don't listen to their advisors. So I'm glad you brought that up. This is not an indictment of the U.S. Intelligence community, in my opinion, or even the leaders or the senior leaders of the Pentagon, who I'm also sure told them the same thing. Moving on, still with the national security and military issues.
Can I put a second comment on that?
Sure.
I would also say that you're right. People did stand up to the administration, especially in the military, and that's why you're seeing Hegseth clean house at the general ranks.
Good point.
They're hollowing out the expertise in the general corps in favor of yes men. I wrote a little thing as part of my campaign, and I sent it around to people. I said essentially, you should get really nervous when you see him fire the chair of the Joint Chiefs, the chief of the Army, chief of the Navy, chief of chaplains. And the chaplain one actually stuck in my brain, and I want people to remember that because it sounds dumb. For anybody that doesn't know, chaplains are like faith leaders. They help service members with faith issues during combat situations or what have you. Seeing them fire the chief of chaplains and the other top generals too, it shows you that they are drilling out of the command structure anybody with moral backbone. The reason that they're targeting these people is because they will stand up. They are not yes men, and they will not go along or tell them what they want to hear at the White House and in Hegseth's office. That's why they're
Yeah.
cleaning house, so they can have the team of yes men around them. And if you think the launching of the Iran war was bad, just wait for how bad it could get if that yes man mentality permeates deeper down into the command structure. I am hoping that
Absolutely.
we can take the Congress back in 2026 and the White House back in 2028 to undo some of the damage that's been done, and I think we can. But if we don't, the results could be catastrophic.
And the firings of dozens of JAGs and inspectors general. It's the same thing. You don't fire all the JAGs if you don't plan on doing something illegal
Yeah.
or unconstitutional.
Mild war crimes, yeah.
Yeah, let's do some war crime. Oh, we got to get rid of the JAG. They'll tell us not to do that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: it's still military and national security. It's a little off the UCMJ and war crimes thing. I have a real problem with the American defense procurement system. Meaning, of course, it's totally corrupt, and it takes forever to get something through R&D and actually manufacture the thing, and it always comes in billions of dollars, over budget. But having said that, why? Well, I know why. I'll ask you. We are still so far behind on our drone technology because we're still, they just passed another, I don't know how many billions to build more F-22s, a new aircraft F-47, which won't be ready for maybe never.
And we know why it's called the F-47, right?
Yes, we do. Well, exactly. Yeah, the Trump 47. And yes, they have allocated millions of dollars for drones. Nowhere near enough. All that, not all. We need to, of course, maintain our fleet or squadrons of jets and so forth and wings. Of course we do. But we don't need all new ones that haven't even been designed yet. We need to put that money into R&D for drones, unmanned weapons platforms. Why aren't we doing that?
Because again, you have a class of leadership in Washington. This ain't just the White House either. You have a class of leadership in Washington that have become so accustomed to big defense spending and big money and expensive weapons systems, the Star Wars mentality from the Cold War. They are so addicted to the returns from that and the donations, the political donations that come from the defense industry to political leaders. They're so addicted to it that they cannot think outside the box, and they do not realize that they are degrading America's readiness for the next major war. This is why Iran went bad for us. You cannot win a war with the missile math being what it was. And the missile math was this: the Iranians could send a Shahed drone, which costs about 30 grand, the price of a Kia Optima. And we or our Gulf allies would have to shoot those drones down with Patriot missiles that cost in excess of 10 to 15 million. So when you're burning that kind of capital on defensive weapons against an offensive weapon that is, again, a Kia Optima with wings, you're not going to win. And unless we right size our arsenal, unless we start thinking strategically about what that next war is going to look like and who it's going to be, then we are going to fall behind. And I would also say another footnote on these systems that the current administration is putting out. If you want to get really horrified, I encourage everybody to go out and look at the unveiling of the Trump class battleship.
No, I did a podcast on that. Yeah.
I was horrified watching that because it is just it's almost absurd how off the mark they are in terms of what their own military experts are telling them as far as weapon systems and what we need to be strategically competent on the high seas. And America's Navy is going to suffer for this, and the taxpayer is going to suffer even more as they fund it.
Well, as a former Marine who served at sea, you know that the weapons systems that are proposed for this monstrosity haven't even been developed yet, and who knows when and if they'll ever be fielded, put into operation. But yet, there it is. So again, that just makes my point. They're putting all this money and time, to blow smoke up his, what, to make him happy and not concentrating on what we need, which is unmanned weapons systems. We've burned through so many of the missiles you just talked about, Patriots and THAADs and HIMARS and so forth. We burned through 2 years worth of Patriot missiles. We make about 600 a year. We've blown through over 1,200 already just in Iran. That's 2 years, but we only make 600. So anyway, moving on, because we're going to come up against the clock here. What's your knowledge, or what do you know about what, if any, military or intelligence support we are currently or planning on giving to Ukraine at this point?
It's not looking good, as from what I hear on the ground. It's not horrible. It's not like we completely abandoned our allies, but there has been this shift of attention. Yeah, the attention economy and war is also a thing, I guess, because there's a shift in attention to staunching the damage, stopping the bleeding from the situation that we created in the Strait of Hormuz, and now the Bab al-Mandab with the Yemenis. We do not have the focus right now where it needs to be on Ukraine. And I've been out there since day one talking about the moral obligation this country has to support a natural ally like Ukraine. And I'm going to continue to do that. I think a refocusing of intelligence and cooperation resources back to Ukraine is a natural choice for a Democratic president to make once we take back White House in 2028. But until then, as far as I know, the Ukrainians are getting kind of hung out to dry because Trump seems more invested in benefiting the interests of Russia than he does the United States or our allies. And I think that's a hard thing to argue right now, especially considering that we just desanctioned Russian oil as a result of the war that we launched with Iran. Like, if this was, if I was being real tinfoil hat, I would say that the war with Iran benefited China and Russia quite a lot. And while the Russians and Chinese are making huge investments in industry and peripheral actors that benefit the Trump family specifically and other people in defense investment that around this, I would start looking really askance at the results, and I would ask you who benefited most from the war with Iran.
Well, talking again, you talking directly, say right now to MAGA voters, people that are considering voting for Republican candidates and maybe Trump again in 2028, what would you tell them are the benefits or lack thereof to America from the war in Iran? What have we benefited?
Hey, MAGA, it's your boy, Adam. Things are really bad right now. This war, I know we're all uncomfortable with it, and it's really encouraging to see you guys speaking your mind about the fact that you disagreed with us launching a new, potentially forever war, or at least forever conflict in the Middle East. If you don't make your leaders on the Republican or like the MAGA electeds understand that there is consequences for breaking their promises to you, they will never change. And the only way that you make them aware or make them feel it is by changing your vote at the ballot box. I'm not asking you to change your party. I'm not asking you to become a Democrat, but I am saying if there's somebody like me in a race where you're at right now that can look you in the eye and explain and validate this frustration that you have with the damage that the war has caused, you have an obligation to vote for that person. There's no way back. And the consequences that you're experiencing right now in terms of your cost of life and quality of life are only going to go up when your government is burning this kind of cash on missile systems that should have never been spent in the first place, rather than investing in your community to give you your jobs back.
And last point for today, and again, this is going to be for MAGA, because I think the people who are going to vote Democratic already know this and don't have to be convinced. Talking to potential or current Trump/Republican voters for the fall and maybe even into 28, what would you tell them about the benefits of remaining within NATO and the catastrophe or the economic fallout, if not the national security fallout, if in fact the United States were to withdraw from NATO?
Yeah. The benefits of NATO, if you're a NATO skeptic, and a lot of people are increasingly becoming that because of rhetoric from this president, I would point to you the original God King of the conservative mentality, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan used NATO as the crowning achievement of American foreign policy. We won the Cold War. We faced down the commies, the Soviets, right? We did great things. We made ungodly advances in technology and cooperation. And the Pax Americana that was created as a result of that is something that we, left, right, center, wherever you are on the political spectrum, we should all be proud of. And if somebody is telling you to be ashamed of the thing that made, one of the many things that made this country so great in the American century, if they're telling you that that was actually a bad thing, they are trying to rewrite your history, and you have a responsibility to stand your ground and make sure that you declare your values, you stay true to the history and the tradition that you came from, and protect the things that the people who built your country, who signed your founding documents, and who led us through the Cold War, you have a responsibility to protect those things in their stead. We have to stay vigilant. And the cost of vigilance is protecting institutions like NATO, being a good ally to our partners around the world, and putting integrity and morality back at the way that we conduct our foreign and military policy.
I agree. And I'll just end it on this. Saying America first does not mean America alone. No country actually in history actually won anything long term by being alone. Even the Roman Empire, who was the most brutal empire, one of them in history, acclimated to other cultures. They wanted other people to come here. They wanted allies. They readily sought allies. Yeah, they kicked their ass first, but then they wanted friends. So they had many, many allies. They didn't isolate themselves. And like I said, they were pretty bad guys. No, we don't need to be alone. We don't want to, or we shouldn't want to build either a figurative or a real wall around ourselves. Adam, you and I and like-minded folks, we need to get out there and talk to the people who are on the fence. And right now, there's a lot of MAGA people, a lot of Republican voters that are on the fence. They're not happy. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their health care. Clinics and hospitals are closing where they live. They're losing Medicare or Medicaid. Schools are closing. They can't afford their rent. They can't buy a house. They're living with their parents. They can, the average price of a new car in America is out of reach of at least half the people. What is it now? 40 to 50,000 for a decent, cheap new car. People that are wanting to buy a car today, couples, are looking solely at used cars for the first time. Yeah, used cars have always been popular, but a lot of people just aren't even considering new cars because of the price and the interest rate. Something's got to change, and I think MAGA voters right now are ripe for change, and they just need to be spoken to on the level that you do. As I said, kitchen table politics.
This is my entire intent behind the new race that I'm in. Whatever happens here in Virginia, I am going to go make eye contact with every constituent that I'm going to represent, and when I get to office, I'm going to represent them. I am listening. It's not me showing up in rural parts of the state and telling them what they need to believe. I'm going out there to make sure I have my thumb on the pulse of what they need. And my job when you send me to Congress is to go get the things you need. Rural healthcare is a great example, right? I want to close tax loopholes for billionaires and data centers and AI companies in this region. And I want to use that money to fund rural healthcare. I want to use that money to fund childcare options for working families. I want to use that money for good, to be constructive with our communities. And there's a chance to do it. Like, we can do this. The money is there to improve your quality of life. It's just that the people you're electing, and this administration is the best example of it, they don't actually care about your quality of life. They want the crown for the crown's sake, and they want profit for profit's sake. That is the core of their ideology. And when you become a speed bump to their success, they're gonna run you over. And they've run you over and over again in Trump's second term and Trump's first term. And if this war in Iran was a thing that helps us all wake up to that concept, and we can all come back together closer to the middle of the political spectrum and agree that we lost our minds for a while, and where do we go from here? That conversation starts with electing people like me. It doesn't have to be me, but it cannot be them. It can't be the people that put you here in the first place. And unless you're willing to help somebody like me throw a brick through the window of that machine, we're going to stay where we are, and we're going to keep sliding backward.
Adam Dunigan. Adam, thank you for joining me again today. Stay on after we go off here. I want to talk to you for just a minute, but this has been Adam Dunigan, Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th congressional district, assuming that he doesn't get gerrymandered out. I'm optimistic that he will not, but we shall see. So again, thanks everyone for joining us today. And as always, you take care. You all stay safe and stay sane.